The fight for technology is really a fight for liberty. Now, technology is changing fast and it's changing our lives more than most people realize. And like all things, there's good and there's bad aspects. But most people don't understand there's a technological battleground that's happening right now. And how this battle over technology ends could be the difference between life, freedom, and liberty, or total oppression and enslavement. In this video, I'm going to explain what's going on and what we all need to be doing if we want to remain free. So stay tuned. Hey everyone, Mark here. And today we are talking about the battle over technology. And it's a battle, like I said in the beginning, that has massive implications. And most people don't really understand what the implications of this battle are. Most people don't really see the problem. And in order to see the problem, first we have to understand what that problem is. Now, first we have to understand that as humans, at least I believe, that we were born with God-given rights. All right, we were born with them, and the government is the everly increasing size of the government are trying to take those rights away, the natural-born rights. Now, in the United States, we have a constitution. It's a constitution of the United States, like most governments have a constitution, which is the rules and regulations they're supposed to work under. And in the United States, the constitution was written in a specific way that doesn't give us rights, but rather it restricts the government's power to take those rights away. And that's a big distinction. It's not about giving the rights. The government does not give us rights. The government is restrained from taking them away. Now, one of those rights is specifically written into the Constitution. As a matter of fact, we'll get to what number that is. But first, we have to understand the battle that's happening with a few of these. And if we go back back into the 90s, we saw that there was a investigation by the federal government. And they launched this investigation into a guy named Phil Zimmerman. And they wanted to go after Phil Zimmerman because of a piece of computer code that he had written. Now, this piece of computer code wasn't just ordinary code. As a matter of fact, it was computer code for encryption, technology that can secure data so it can be transferred back and forth and hackers can't get in and get it, the encryption data. Now, at that time, when he was writing this encryption code, this encryption data, the government, like I said, came after him basically on the grounds that he was exporting munitions. So the U.S. government said that encryption can only be used by the military and no private people can do that, and you can't export it. And of course, you upload computer code and it goes all over the world. So he was exporting munition. They said he was harming national security, of course, because the military uses encryption, and so they said he was harming national security by doing that. But what's interesting is that in response to this, Zimmerman had to go to court. And what he did is he printed out all of the code. And when he printed out the code, he put it all together in a big old book. And he took it with him to court and he put the book down, right, the paper. And then he argued that the First Amendment in the Constitution, the very first one, the First Amendment guarantees or gives him the right to free speech. And as he printed out the code, you could see that it was speech. It was letters, it was numbers, it was speech. Now, what happened next is that eventually the feds had to back down. The appellate courts agreed. They supported his claims. They said, clearly we can tell that's speech, and it's guaranteed under the First Amendment, you have the right to free speech. So the takeaway after that 1990s case against Zimmerman is that the appellate courts decided that encryption technology cannot be outlawed. It's protected. It's protected by the First Amendment, which is free speech. However, today, they're both coming under attack again. Both free speech, of course, is being attacked everywhere, and we have encryption being attacked as well. Now, since the United States was founded, like I said, the forefathers wrote this Constitution, and they gave us this Constitution like I said, to limit the powers of the government because they had just come from a previous government that had massive tyranny and oppression. And so they were trying to escape the oppression, and they came and they created a new country. And so as they wrote the Constitution, they were all pretty smart, and they figured out a way to have different parts of the government so they would not be able to consolidate the power. And again, like I said, the Constitution was specifically limiting the power so they wouldn't let the same thing happen again, which was the tyranny and oppression that they came from. Now, like I said, inside the Constitution, there's several amendments, and each one of them guarantees us certain rights, guarantees that the government can't take them away, doesn't give them to us, guarantees it can't be taken away, right? And basically what these rights are, like I said, we have the First Amendment, which is the freedom of speech. The First Amendment, what it actually says is that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So that's the right to free speech, it's the right to assemble, and things like that, the freedom of press, etc. And so that was the first one, I guess the most important one. So I think that the First Amendment in the U.S. Constitution protects against laws prohibiting the freedom of religion, speech, and the press, right? So it doesn't give us the right, it prohibits the restriction of those, right? So that's an important piece to understand. Now, the reason why that's so important is because discussion is important. I know a lot of people are up in arms over this free speech today because people say mean things. People say hateful things. But words are just words. We used to be a little bit tougher. We had a little bit thicker skin and we could deal with those words. But the reason why it's important is because we need to have free and open discussion. Through free and open discussion, we find truth. And the truth is always going to win. And I know a lot of people today think that free speech should be restricted because people are going to say mean things. Well, the thing is, when people are free to say those things, then everybody knows in society knows who those bad people are. And we know who's saying those hateful things, and they can be called out for it, and they can be put on that, right? People are afraid of free speech because of disinformation that gets spread around. But that's exactly why we need the free speech. We need to have discussion, because through discussion, we're going to be able to find the truth. I know sometimes I might see something on Twitter or somewhere that or maybe I'll read an article and I'll read it and I'm like, wow, that's so compelling. That's right there. And then I'll look through the comments and I'll look at people's objections to that. And all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, that's not right. These are really good objections, right? Or sometimes I might think I have something right, and through some of my friends or neighbors might have opposing viewpoints. And sometimes we'll get into some discussions. I won't say heated, but through those discussions, I'll either sharpen my arguments, or I'll be able to see that the other side could be right and I might be wrong. So discussion is so important. That's why we need the freedom of speech. Now, of course, after the First Amendment comes the Second Amendment. Now, the Second Amendment, do you know what it is? It's the right to bear arms. Now, if you're not in the United States, this might seem a little bit weird to you, but in the United States, again, the Constitution is designed not to give us rights, but to prevent the government from taking our rights away. And so that's why the Second Amendment is important. Now, it says it's a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Meaning the government, again, has limited power. They cannot move in and take that away. It can't be infringed. It can't even be moved on, all right? That's why the Second Amendment is there. Now, of course, that is coming under attack, like all of our freedoms that we have. And that's coming under attack. And of course, most of the world, it's already been taken away. But what they're doing in order to attack this is they're trying to change the narrative. And so with the Second Amendment, it's to protect ourselves, to keep a free state, right? A free state, to protect ourselves from the government's encroachment on our freedoms. And they've tried to change the narrative to where it's really, they want to say it's about self-defense. And so I have the right to a Second Amendment because I have the right to defend myself. And then, but that's an argument they can easily win. They can say, oh, well, you don't need to defend yourself. We have the police. Or if nobody has weapons, then you don't need to defend yourself against them, right? So they can easily win that, but that's not really why it's there. It's to defend ourselves against the tyranny of the government that would try to take those away, and that's an argument they can't win. But I'm not talking about the Second Amendment or the First Amendment really today, not in the way that you might think. I'm not here to make an argument about that, but rather that the Second Amendment isn't really that effective today. And what I mean by that is that, today, first of all, policing that is pretty difficult. We have 3D printers now, and today someone can get a 3D printer and print their own weapons if they want to do that, so it's much less effective. And even if we were allowed to have fully automatic weapons, the government has tanks. They got bombers, they got jets, they have nuclear weapons. As a matter of fact, one of our own lawmakers, U.S. Representative Eric Swalwell, he tweeted back in 2018 stating, "It would be a short war The government has nukes, too many of them, but they're legit. So that made massive headlines. I don't know if you've heard that, but of course, a U.S. representative basically threatening Americans to use nukes against them. It's not a good look for a U.S. representative that's supposed to be working for the people. They're not rulers, right? But just like he's making the point, he's actually right. So even if you had, automatic weapons, what good are they going to be against the weapons that the government has, right? And that's why it brings us all the way back to the beginning where we started, which is where the new battleground is. Now, the new battleground, like I said, is about encryption, and it's about the encryption of our money and our information, all right? And that's the battleground. We are an information economy. Data is the new asset of the world. And so we need to be able to encrypt our money and our information. Now, of course, just like everything else that the government wants to get rid of, it's to protect us, right? We got to get rid of free speech because people can say things that might hurt you. We have to protect you. So let's take away your rights. Just like weapons, someone might use them for bad. So give up your rights and we'll protect you. And of course, the government has to make the same arguments against these as well. Because of course, criminals are going to abuse them, right? They're going to abuse freedom of speech. They're going to abuse the Second Amendment to go create harm, right? And they're going to use this free speech. The government's going to tell us that, these criminals will abuse free speech and they're going to use that to spread disinformation, to cause dissent, to cause harm. They're going to tell us that they'll use this information to brainwash us and indoctrinate us away from what the government wants. They're going to say that, again, people will use the Second Amendment, the weapons, to cause harm to the citizens and things like that. But of course, like all things, these are just tools. And tools can be used for good or bad, right? Like think about like a fire. A fire can cook my food. A fire can keep me warm. A fire could burn my house down. A screwdriver could be used to fix a car. It could also be used as a weapon in somebody else's hands. And so they're tools, and it really comes down to how you want to use them. Now, if you go back through history, which of course I love to do, you can see over and over and over again that once a nation disarms its citizens, it always leads to death and murder. And that's a pretty shocking fact. A lot of people don't want to recognize that. But of course, if we go back through history, we can see examples of this happening over and over and over. Because of course, at least in the United States, the government is for the people, by the people. They're not rulers. They're not kings. They're for the people. And then again, that's why the Second Amendment is there. If they become too tyrannical, they're supposed to be replaced. Now, like I said, there's examples all throughout history. I can give you a couple examples. So in 1911, Turkey disarmed its citizens. After that, 1.5 million Armenians were slaughtered. In 1929 in Russia, they disarmed the citizens. After that, 20 million Russians were murdered. In 1935, China disarmed its citizens. After that, 20 million Chinese were killed. In 1938, Germany disarmed its citizens. After that, 6 million Jews were murdered. 1956, Cambodia, citizens disarmed, 1 million intellectuals were killed. I can go on and on and on. 1964, Guatemala, citizens disarmed, 100,000 Mayan Indians massacred. 1970, Uganda, citizens disarmed, 300,000 Christians put to death. We have it happen in Australia and New Zealand, and look what's going on there. So history is littered with examples if we just want to take the time to look. But again, this video isn't about the Second Amendment. It's not about guns. This is about something way more important. Now, I think that encryption is an even more powerful defensive weapon because it's the encryption that enables us to have the freedom to resist dictatorships and tyranny. It allows us to fight back. It gives us a tool that we can actually fight back with our own money and with our own information. Like I said, with 3D printing today, both money and information can be effortlessly converted into weaponry as long as with 3D printing today, both money and information can be effortlessly converted into weaponry as well as for exerting influence, right? And pushing education and other forms of what we might call soft power. Now, currently we live in a world that mostly allows encryption right now, but that's changing. The powers that be are trying to change this. And as I said, this is a battleground and we have to hold the line on this one. It has massive implications, and hopefully you understand what that is. Now, of course, like I said, like all tools, they can be used for good and bad. And yes, criminals will also use encryption, and they'll probably use encryption to help them do something bad. And of course, that's going to be the reason why we're all told that there has to be an end to encryption. So law enforcement, tax collectors, they can all do their job. And they can protect us poor citizens. But I saw that encryption is the modern backstop of liberty. What do you think? Leave me a comment and let me know down below. Do you see encryption as maybe the only thing holding back the tyranny of the government? Is it the new First Amendment and the Second Amendment combined? Leave me a comment and let me know. Of course, like always, give me a thumbs up on this video if you like it. If you don't like the video, give me a thumbs down. But tell me in the comments why you think so I can, of course, make better content for you. And that's what I got today. To your success, I'm out.